Grow Generation, where the pros go to grow. Grow Generation is your one-stop shop for hydroponic grow supplies, product systems, and more. Grow Generation serves customers across the nation and carries a wide inventory of renowned cultivation brands. Go to www.growgeneration.com, where the pros go to grow.
What's going on, Geeky Jocks? It's Shocky here. I apologize for not having a episode last week. There were some technical difficulties getting everything set up to record, but we're back this week. We're here to cover, of course, Ted Lasso, but then also talk about some Star Wars news that came out that we kind of covered in the canteen a little bit, but then also not really when it came to video games. So I'm going to talk about that because it did break out yesterday. I wanted to make sure we talk about that on some of the news. Kind of upsetting when it came to one of my favorite Star Wars games out there. So let's get right into it. None other than Ted Lasso. So we covered the premiere episode where Ted is back with AFC Richmond heading into the second season where they've been relegated down to the championship. Where we pick up with the season, though, is that they've been set on a kind of a not a bad streak, but not a good streak either, of 7 straight draws and going into 8 games. And so what we kind of find out is basically the team is comfortable and everything's going smoothly. Ted has created a great atmosphere for the team. Everyone's happy, but that doesn't necessarily present an opportunity for wins. And so in the last episode, the second episode, we see that there's more issues in the team than what just seems to be appearing on surface. And so that's why having the therapist show up, Dr. What's her name? I have it written down here. Dr. Fieldstone. There we go. Dr. Fieldstone's, starting to get to the root of some of the players and some of the coaches' mentality and approach to the game, and we see it's working. But ultimately, it's got to be Ted that is convinced of it. And so, what we saw in the last episode is Jamie Tart, the prodigal son, wanted to come back to AFC Richmond after being let go from Man City, and initially Ted said no. And to the team's dismay, or surprise, you want to say. They were shocked that he said no. A lot of the team members thought that he was basically jumping on ship and bringing Jamie back, and didn't look like it. But it's with a conversation with Dr. Fieldstone that we see Ted has a change of heart. Dr. Fieldstone tells Ted, "Hey, you got a great, team and atmosphere going on here, but it seems like they're comfortable with just drawing, and just being set in their ways. And it's not really setting a team atmosphere." And so at the very end of the second episode, we see Jamie Tart has returned, and it's a shocker, and it's to the team who not many of them are big fans of Jamie, and even to the coaches, that Ted went and did something outside of the norm and outside of the advice of his coaches. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And we saw already in episode 3 that it wasn't an easy acceptance for Jamie. Jamie is basically trying to figure out how to get back in the good graces of his teammates. And, being Jamie, he thinks that all he's got to do is just buy them, some PS5s, and he's going to be right back in there. But to the success of Dr. Fieldstone again, she, is we don't know really what she says, but she's able to get through to Jamie, and Jamie then through a gesture, a symbolic gesture, is able to win the team back slowly but surely. And so the focal point, though, of this episode has to do with Sam Adebayo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. But he is part of a ad campaign for AFC Richmond's main sponsor, Dubai Air. And when he contacts his parents about it, he finds out that the airline company is owned by a major oil company, which is doing harm to his home country. And so what we get here is kind of the episode where it kind of represents what this world has been going through in the past year or so with sports and protesting. And what I really appreciate about it is that it wasn't just the same generic type of episode talking, about what's been going on around the world, but it did something else. It made it connect really, with Sam and some of the players on AFC Richmond. And so through this, ad campaign, Sam has to drop out of it, and we see that Rebecca and Keely and and Ted and the entire organization all back Sam, and they're supportive of him, which is really great to see. But then he takes it a step further, and on his kit takes some black tape and covers up the Dubai Air logo, um, and asking to see if anybody else would join him, not forcing anyone, but of course the entire team does. Now it's very it's a very heartwarming type of episode to see the team bond that way, and interesting to see, the writers' take on, how sports and social protesting have an impact, a correlation with each other. But some of the funnier parts of the episodes, I swear, it comes from Ted, and also even from Roy. Roy Kent, coming back on doing his what is it called, pundit, and sports broadcasting is what we call it here in the States. But that to me was hilarious. Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent, is absolute genius with that character, and having him on as a pundit, talking about soccer is just hilarious because he breaks the mold on the traditional sports broadcaster, and some of the lines he says throughout his time, being on camera is hilarious as well. This episode, though, with Ted, we got to see a different side of him, not the happy-go-lucky, always with a positive attitude Ted, but another version of him known as Led Tasso. And Led Tasso is the traditional American football coach that you would think of when you think of high school football or even small college football. Constant yelling, constant berating, and the mentality is that you use that persona to get the team to hate you, but then to enjoy or bond stronger together for that hatred over that head coach. And it's really hilarious. Some of the lines that Jason Sudeikis, I don't know if he came up with them or whoever wrote them, are hilarious. But it's ultimately what you would expect from a traditional coaching aspect, and it's something that a lot of coaches do. They try to do this to form a team bonding. And what's funny about it is that I don't think it really works all that well. In my years' experience of coaching, I've never seen it really work all that well. It really just brings down the morale of the team. And Dr. Philstone even calls it out. And, has that ever worked ever before? And the only time that Ted can even think about, it working was at a Chuck E. Cheese. What was a birthday party or whatever. So yeah, it's really interesting, that take on it. And I've been wondering if we would ever see a side of Ted like that, because that traditionally is what you get from American style of coaching, more or less, and also in other sports as well around the world. But for me, being around football so much, yeah, I do see that a lot there. And it doesn't. It very rarely ever works, in that style. But it was funny overall. So, what we do get from this episode is, number one, the streak is over. No more ties, no more draws. The team, though, has unfortunately lost. So we don't know where they are in the standings of the season, and if they're going to be promoted or not. But the team is excited that the streak is now over and they can focus on bigger and better things. Rebecca is had a key episode this week where her god's daughter came to visit her, and instead of just parading around and doing little kid thing stuff, she brought her in and showed her what her job was really about, and kind of encouraged her to be more of a stronger woman. And you see Rebecca growing as a character and as a person this season, and really taking ownership of the team. And so it's interesting there. Keely is also, still dating Roy, working on her what was it? The app. There we go. The dating app that she's now promoting, and it looks like it's going to set up between Rebecca and someone else, a mysterious person, start dating, which would be hilarious if it was one of the football players or even Ted Lasso on there. And so it looks overall like the team is in a better place. It seems like mentally wise, they're stronger. Unity wise, they're stronger. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next steps take place for the team and heading into what appears to be the second half of the season, I think. Because the next episode will be a Christmas episode, which is kind of weird already. But with it being a Christmas episode, it's traditionally the midway point for the football season in the Premier League. So overall, I'm enjoying this season just like I did the first season. So I hope that there's more and more seasons to come of Ted Lasso, and we'll see what goes on. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this week's episode. Second story I want to go over. So in the Cantina, that's our Star Wars podcast, and that's where we basically cover everything Star Wars, but there was some news that broke out yesterday, and I wanted to make sure to cover it. Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, okay? So if you're into Star Wars video games, there hasn't been a whole lot since Jedi Fallen Order and basically Battlefront 2, but Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is a mobile game that has had massive popularity. It is the most profitable Star Wars game in history. It's a mobile game that's played on iOS or Android. Has a massive following. You have players who've turned themselves into YouTube streamers and made massive, gains through that. And it's become very popular, and it's survived over 5 years, and it's, on pace to probably do another 5 years as well. But it hasn't been easy. The developers at Star Wars Galaxies of Hero, Capital Games, it's been a odd relationship with its players, and I'm one of them. Okay, and so when I saw this, story broke out yesterday, it kind of forced me to say I finally got to speak up and say it. And after seeing some of the YouTubers out there that have been covering Star Wars Galaxy here for a while, it's something that we need to start banding together. So Capital Games. They're in it they're a business, right? They're into making this game for profit. It's the most profitable Star Wars game in history. I think it's the longest that has developers working on it. And I've been playing the game, so I started a couple months after it launched, played all the way up until about year 4. And then when they came out with Galactic Legends, Rey, and Kylo Ren, I just kind of had enough of it, because it seemed like every time that I would get to a point where I was like, okay, I'm caught up with some of the big guys, they threw some things at you, some characters, some gear upgrades and everything, and it just shot you right back down. And so I'm a person that doesn't spend a ton of money on it, probably, on average, maybe $10 a month back in the day when it was really popular. Now, I think I've spent maybe like $5 on it total. I picked it back up about 7-8 months ago, and I've been playing it because it seemed like it was going in the right direction. There was enough of Galactic Legends that you could have an option and variety to choose from. You didn't have to stick with the same old pathway of farming. And there was enough characters out there like Darth Vader where they could combat, and you could have a chance against Galactic Legends if you didn't have any, or if you only had one or maybe two, versus someone who had multiple. And in the past couple of weeks, Capital Games has just basically destroyed what I would say destroyed that kind of concept of fun playing and competitive playship. I think that they've been lost on how can we profit from this game, and how can we continue to keep getting money from this game, which I understand it's a business. You need to make money. But at the same time, too, competitiveness and having that playable atmosphere is what will keep people coming back and back in, constantly, spending money on here. And so it's like Battlefront 2. When Battlefront 2 took away a lot of the issues at the beginning, you had more players come in and join in, and more by 2 years after the game had launched, you had more players playing Battlefront 2 on server than ever before. And it doesn't seem like Capital Games at Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is getting that message. And I get their arguments with, but it's poor business. It's poor customer service, right? So issue number one is their communication. years upon years, the early years, it was always about, we're going to communicate with our players, we're going to communicate with our players, we're going to communicate with our players. We, you get the monthly blog posts that, tells us what's coming up. And in the past month to 2 months, we've had multiple changes to the game that is basically taking it from a casual player that maybe spends a couple dollars here and there, to being competitive with guys who are spending, thousands of dollars. You know, it's just not coming to light. Basically, they're taking that away. They're taking away all the major characters that were, what do you call them? So you had the Galactic Legends, and then you had your regular characters, Padme and Vader and so forth. I can't think of the name right now. I apologize. But they're basically taking that all away, so that now the only way you can beat a Galactic Legend is to have Galactic Legends. That's one thing. The other thing is that they're dropping new characters, and the farming system put in place. It's going to take multiple years to get them. So, like Commander Ahsoka Tano, it's going to take multiple years to get her if you're free to play, or you just you budget and you only spend a couple dollars here and there on it. Then you see just some things they've done on the Android side of it, Google Play side of it, where they've taken away some of the bonuses by playing through Google Play. It's poor. It's a poor way of taking care of your customers. Just in my opinion alone. I know I'm not as serious a gamer as, say, like Arnold or Cubs fan Han, and some mobile gamer when he was still playing. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed just being a casual player and and farming here and there. But it's getting a little too ridiculous. I mean, they're getting greedy with it, and so I hope that some of the things that they have lined up for here in the future, they take a step back, they look at it and say, you know what, maybe that we're going in the wrong direction here, and we, reverse course. And so hopefully we see that. What we're going to probably end up getting, though, is the same old. Capital Games will basically, make as much money as possible on some of the whales that are playing, and then throw a bone here to some of the free-to-play players, or guys like me, players like me that spend a couple bucks here or there, and that's it. And we'll have to take it. And but once a new Star Wars game come out, whether it's Jedi Fallen Order 2 or Battlefront 3 or whatever it comes out, then ultimately, that's where I'll be at, there. Okay. And then third and final story here is Bad Batch. The season finale just kicked off part 1. So right before the season finale kicked off, the day before, we got news that season 2 would be coming up, which is good news. We talked about that in the cantina. Basically, there's still a lot left to talk about in this storyline with these characters of Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Echo, even Crosshair. But the one thing I will say, and we kind of talked about it, is that this has been a prototypical Dave Filoni type of show, where the first season is very drawn out. So it's a slow burn, where you're not going to get into the meat and bones of it until later on at the end of the season. And then now with season 2, it looks like that's where we're going to get some more action and I think quicker storylines here. So the first part is we see the Bad Batch on its way to try to rescue Hunter from the clutches of the Empire, with Crosshair basically holding him hostage. But what was interesting about this episode, of part 1 of 2, is that we finally get to see a new side of Kamino, where Omega takes the Clone Force 99 through a secret tunnel into a separate laboratory that was not something that we had seen beforehand in all the Star Wars episodes and so forth. And we got to see that the Clone Force 99 were created in a separate lab along with Omega, and that they were basically created this way. What was supposed to be that they were different than the regulars, and that they were just a bad batch from regs, is that no, these were actually created. The Clone Force 99 was created for a purpose and intent. So it's going to be interesting to see what that purpose was. And so that's one thing that we pick up on that episode. And then the second thing is we finally find out what happened to Kamino at the end of, or the beginning of the rise of the Empire. So Kamino, ultimately known for its cloning technology, and we were wondering what that, what Kamino had to do with, during the Empire, since we know in Mandalorian and also in the sequel trilogy, cloning is a big key part to those stories. But we know now that Kamino is gone, and so that's probably how we know the Empire took all the files, they took all the chief medical personnel, and maybe what we don't find out is, or we haven't found out yet, is that there are some key elements in Kamino of what allowed cloning to be so successful. Because we could see that the Empire, whether it was in the Mandalorian or through the sequel trilogy, that cloning isn't as easy as I guess the Emperor thought it should be. So, all right, well, that's it for today's episode of the Geeky Jocks. It's a little shorter episode this week because it's Saturday. I got some things I got to do. I'm on the run here. So I wanted to just stop by, give, my thoughts on, of course, Ted Lasso and some Star Wars stuff. But next week, we're going to do kind of a recap of the Olympics sports-wise. We're going to get to some actual sports talks here, set up for the NFL season, Premier League starting back up soon, and try to get into some of the more sports-oriented stuff. But this week I'll be traveling, and so I got some stuff that I'll be posting online as well. So make sure you check out the site for all great things, whether it's Marvel, DC, Star Wars, film, television, and let us know in the comments section if there's something that we are not covering that you think we should cover. Let us know that. So I'll see you guys later.